Thank you for tuning in to Breaking Down the Barriers on KZI 88.7 FM. I'm your host, Beverly Reeves, and with me today is Miss Loretta Taylor as co-host. Breaking Down the Barriers is an initiative of the Austin Independent School District. This program was created to provide information on resources, programs, and district initiatives to support families in preparing each and every student to be successful. Today's guests are Mr. Charlie Gutierrez, Administrative Supervisor of the Science Department, and Dr. Barbara Brink, Science Specialist, both with AISD. They are here today to talk to us about science, technology, engineering, and math. So let's start with you, Dr. Brink. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your tenure with Austin ISD.
Thank you. I'm Barbara Brink. I've been in science education for 46 years.
What?
And yes, I've been with Austin ISD for 15 years.
Okay.
In the Department of Science, Curriculum, and Associate Superintendent's Office.
Okay.
And Mr. Gutierrez, can you tell us about your role and how long you've been with AISD?
Okay. Well, I can't top Barbara's 46, but I have been in education for 29 years. This is my 29th year, and all of them have been with AISD. I taught for 8 years at the Alternative Learning Center, and then I taught at Reagan High School for 11 years, and then I've been a science specialist, and now I'm the science supervisor for the district in AISD.
And can you both tell us a little bit about what services are provided by the science team and what subject matters are covered by the curriculum?
Mm-hmm. So our team, we're at the district level, but we provide curriculum for all sciences, K through 12, all grades, and we also provide professional development for teachers, and we also provide campus support to help teachers grow to become better teachers. Every campus has different needs, every teacher has different needs, every student has different needs, so our team has to be very flexible in what we provide. We don't try to make cookie cutter approaches, and we try to really meet the needs of our especially our teachers. That's our main audience.
And about curriculum, what about, do we write our own curriculum? Do we get it from another agency?
We write our own curriculum.
Okay.
We follow the state standards called the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, and we have our curriculum. We have assessments that match the STAR, and our efforts are to promote science in the best practice, which is hands-on, 40% laboratory engagement. We provide the textbooks. We ask that children each keep an interactive notebook. We ask that they have laboratory investigations and the out-of-doors experiences.
Wow. It's a lot more than I remember doing back when I was in K-12. Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about STEM. That's the big initiative right now, science, technology, engineering, and math. What is it and why the push right now?
Well, STEM, it doesn't have a very clear definition. It means different things to different people, but in education, it means teaching science and math through the use of technology and through the use of engineering practices. So basically, students are applying what they learn. They're using what they learn in science and math classes to build something or create something or solve a problem. In higher education, there are also STEM careers or STEM fields in higher education. So we try to encourage our students to go into those fields as well. And then STEM careers would be things like engineering, all kinds of different careers that would qualify. Anything that is science or math related or engineering related. And Barbara has, I know you like to think of teachers as also being a STEM career.
So what you're going to start seeing, Beverly and Loretta, we're going to start seeing more STEM centers on our campuses, so principals are dedicating some space to STEM centers. And you'll see maker spaces. These are popping up all over in our campuses. So what it is, exactly what Charlie was trying to tell you, is that we have opportunities for children to get in and apply the science and apply the math that they're learning. What Charlie wants me to tell you is that professionally, you hear statistically that women and minorities do not choose to take the STEM pathways. And I submit to you that if we add the statistic of how many minorities and women enter science and math teaching, and we start counting science and math teaching as STEM professionals, then we could say that women and minorities do enter the STEM careers. But unfortunately, teaching is not considered a STEM career.
Okay, but that's a different way of looking at it.
Exactly,
Right.
and your numbers all of a sudden go, hey, let's accentuate the positive because we chose to teach science or teach mathematics. I personally see that as a STEM career.
Right, and you're modeling for your female and minority students.
Excellent point.
Right, right.
And I think both of us consider ourselves scientists, even if, other people might not consider us that.
Wow. You are a scientist to me.
Thank you.
Another iteration of STEM is STEAM, which adds the A for arts. So I'm assuming that's teaching math and science through the use of arts using the definition that you just provided. Do we do that in AISD?
Yes, the maker spaces that Barbara was talking about are a part of that.
Okay.
Maker spaces can vary a lot. It can be at the high end. It's things like laser printers and 3D printers and things like that, where students might create, I don't know, a birdhouse or something on a computer program and then create it in real life in a wood shop. So that's one type of makerspace. But at the other end, even down to kinder and pre-K, you can have makerspaces that are more about being creative in an artistic way. And so maybe you're building, I don't know, just things that you're given a problem and you approach it in an artistic way instead of in a more engineering type way. And so that's kind of bringing the arts into it a little bit.
Okay.
You can also bring in things like music and dance into your teaching as well. And those, in my opinion, those help to bring more students to raise their interest in science and math, because they may be more interested in the arts than they are in the engineering piece. And so it's another way to get them interested in science and math.
Right. So what specific programs are there in the district that support STEM? Or are there specific programs?
Well, there are some broad programs that aren't specific to STEM. Things like our Whole Child Initiative,
Right.
our social and emotional learning initiative. Things like that support all students and help all students to be successful. They promote a growth mindset, which is also something that students help students to succeed in things that they might not be where they might not think that they can succeed. And so specifically to science and math, we have a program that we've had for the last 3 years. It's run by the National Alliance for Partnerships and Equity, NAPE. And they provide training for our teachers in micro-messaging. It's called a Micro-Messaging Academy. It's funded by a grant. It's funded by NXP, used to be Freescale. And for the last 3 years, we've been working with our middle school and high school teachers in math, science, and career and technology education. And this training is very different from most trainings. Most trainings focus on learning the science or learning the math, or they focus on here's how you teach it. in an effective way. This training focuses on the relationships that students and teachers have with each other. And so when we talk about micro messages, those are the little things that teachers do and parents do that can either encourage or discourage their students to go into certain fields or certain careers. So it might be things like calling on the boys more than the girls.
Right.
Oh, I want to address this if you allow
Sure.
me to interrupt.
Yes.
So we've heard of the glass ceiling. Well, I would like to broaden that a little bit to talk about the class ceiling that we have. There are obstructions put in the path of minorities, males, females, but it could be an obstruction because of your race or your gender or maybe your age. And so each of us has faced this glass ceiling, each of us. And the micro messaging that Charlie is talking about may not be so micro. It may be how you address your students, or actually counseling students to not pursue a particular pathway. So the training that the science department offers helps to make teachers, counselors, anybody working with students aware that, oh my gosh, I just told that child not to take this math course or not to take this science course. So to raise our own awareness and then help us move beyond that so that we can encourage all students to pursue any course of action, classroom, course, profession.
Right.
So,
Go ahead.
sorry, in continuing on that topic of the class ceiling, we do often hear, and you mentioned this, that girls and students of color, they're not really taking classes in science and math. So does research support that, and is that true within Austin ISD?
Well, now we're talking back to remember when we talked about statistically, women and minorities do not show up in great numbers in the STEM careers. That's statistically true, yes. However, I would like to tell you that at the Regional Science Fair in Austin, Texas, housed at the Palmer Event Center, every year our numbers for girls in the fair are higher than males. So there are examples where we can show that women and minorities are enjoying these courses. We just have to make sure that they continue, that something doesn't block them and stop them on their journey. I would like to say that some of us found the pathway very difficult, and it would have been easy to divert our plans and go in a different direction. But people, science teachers, math teachers, we have persevered. We were persistent and tenacious. We turned a defiant ear to counselors or teachers who said, oh, you can't do that. We chose a path of most resistance rather than least resistance, not to prove it to other people, but to prove it to ourselves.
Yeah, and that's good. What it sounds like we really should start doing is really encouraging our students and our families to really encourage participation in these classes and to look at STEM careers as a possibility and not focus on, oh, that's what men do. That's not for women, or that's not for people of color. That's, for them to do.
That's the micro messaging that
Correct.
Mr. Gutierrez is talking
Right.
about.
And my father is a retired engineer and
Of color.
of color. And he wanted us, both my brother and myself, to become engineers, which I did not do. So it wasn't due to lack of
Modeling.
It wasn't due to lack of modeling. It wasn't due to lack of encouragement on the family side. It was on my side
Choice.
because it was a choice. However, at school, all my science teachers were men, all my math teachers were men, and so I really didn't see any. My father was the engineer, so I didn't see any girls doing it. But you see that
Exactly.
changing now, which is a good thing, and I'm glad we're having this conversation.
Absolutely.
We know that AISD is very focused on equity for all students. How does STEM fit into that?
Well, STEM is a place where women and children of color have been traditionally underrepresented. And so that is something where we do try to encourage those students to enter those fields and take more rigorous science classes, harder math classes, so that they can be prepared, so they can at least have the option to go on in higher education and go into STEM fields. There are a lot of STEM fields that don't require, there's a kind of a misconception that you have to be at a top school and have to take, 4 years or 6 years of post-secondary education, and there's lots of careers out there that you can have a good, solid, enjoyable career and do it with 2 years at ACC or something like that. Biotechnology, biotechnicians, all they need is 2 years at ACC, and they make a good, solid career. And so there's a lot of options out there for students.
The makerspace that I witnessed at Martin Middle School had the room divided into all the different opportunities for students. So maybe I am interested, Charlie mentioned the 3D printer, but what if I'm interested in costume design? So they had a very high-end sewing machine where children could make the costumes for the next theatrical performance.
Wow, okay.
They had a green screen set up where children can videotape acting, or maybe even meteorology. Exactly. So every morning we could broadcast from the makerspace the weather for the day throughout the campus. So there's so many options. We need to, I'm glad for this program to say, well, this is STEM and this is not. It might change people's perceptions to know that there's a lot of definition to STEM. And Charlie's right, where it's not all master's and PhD degrees. It's an associate degree gets you in the field at a quality salary.
So, along that line, we always talk about being an engineer or being a doctor or being I have a
Computer scientist.
High school classmate who is literally a rocket scientist for NASA. Those are the jobs that we hear about. What other jobs are out there that are quote unquote STEM?
So one place where our team kind of takes the lead also is in outdoor education. So we have lots of outdoor learning centers. We have where teachers can just take their kids outside and actually be out in nature as they teach. And maybe it's as simple as doing a math lesson outside, and you're not really, but it can be deeper than that. It can be studying the plants and animals that are right outside your school or in your neighborhood.
Or the chemistry of soil and the biochemistry of growth, cellular growth, and then the chemistry of nutrition. All right there, because we have so many gardens now on so many of our campuses.
We have gardens where students are raising food that's being used in the cafeteria.
Right.
Then they, turn that around and use the compost to help the garden, things like that. So environmental type careers are very, very big right now. So environmental engineers or environmental chemists, those are interesting to a different group of students than things like engineering, just straight engineering might be. Lots of different fields that students can go into.
Yeah, that's good to know. That is very good to know. So in 2014, a couple of years ago, the African American Community Advisory Committee on Educational Excellence made a recommendation to increase the number of African American students in science and math classes. So it sounds like part of the STEM programs or initiatives that you mentioned earlier possibly address part of this. Did you want to talk about some other initiatives or further address maybe NAEP or some other things?
One of the things we haven't talked about yet is the fact that Austin ISD has moved in a huge direction to offer parents and children choice.
Okay.
We have choice campuses. So we're familiar with our magnets. Keeling Middle School is a magnet for math and science, but lately we've been offering single gender choice. And Loretta mentioned that she went to an all-female high school. So one of the things Loretta could tell us is what opportunities that opened up for her, because the competition or the stereotyping, Loretta, you're a girl, this child is a boy. No, when it's a single gender school, it's all of the opportunities are open to that gender. So they'll all be taking the math courses and they'll all be taking the science courses.
Right.
I had an opportunity to be on the robotics team.
See there?
That was
Exactly.
a great experience.
And we're seeing, I just yesterday visited a campus where the third graders are going to start building robots. So if we can start early with saying there's no gender bias or children of color bias toward doing something in science, engineering something, robotics is a great example of application of the science in engineering, and robotics is engineering. So,
Yeah, I'd like to add a little bit about NAEP. So one of the things that they do is, they do talk about the micro messages, but they have, it's much bigger than that. They talk about growth mindset and cultural proficiency, all kinds of things. And it's really about the teacher building their relationships with the students.
Right.
And one of the things that is key about it is that it's a wonderful training because the teachers actually become scientists. The teachers have to do some sort of project in their own classroom where they try out things. Like we had one that all he did was every time he said scientist, he said she instead of he. And by the end of the school year, the kids were doing the same thing. He just very subtle,
Wow.
very,
Yeah.
didn't make a big deal about it. The other piece that they emphasize is that those personal stories, like you mentioned with you and your parents, those personal stories are very important because students need to see people that look like them doing science. And so there are websites of just scientists out there, they just share pictures of themselves and the variety of different people that you see and the different types of science that they do. Some people like to be outside all the time. Some people love to be in a lab. My son, that's what he's going to do. He loves being in a lab. And one of my sons, my other one not so much. but those personal stories really help kids to connect and to see that they can do this. One of my personal favorite stories was when I was teaching. I was teaching a chemistry class, and one of my former students that had already graduated came just to visit. She just came by. She was at UT, and she came by just to visit, and her brother happened to be in the classroom, and I'm teaching kids how to balance equations, and she just comes in, and I'm like, hey, Amelia, you want to finish this lesson? And she just came up and starts teaching the lesson, and the kids were just so impressed. They couldn't believe that she could just walk in and do that, and that was just one of my favorite moments when I was teaching. So
Beverly and Loretta, one thing we haven't mentioned is the power of modeling and having models, and that's where Charlie's going with this conversation. So one of the things that we do as a science staff at AISD is we put models human models in the classroom with students. Central Texas Engineers is invited into our classrooms. They do engineering projects with elementary, middle, and high. We have our STEM conference every August, where we have scientists and engineers present to our teachers new and improved strategies. We have an amazing thing that we do. We rent out the Alamo Draft House, and we show a movie. It's usually fictional, and then we bring in a scientist to talk about the science in that movie. So it's all open to the teachers, and again, modeling what is STEM, what is science for that matter, and who are in those roles. And it is open to everybody.
Yeah, scientists don't all look, with the crazy hair like Albert Einstein.
Right?
There are all kinds.
We have a fabulous activity with our young children. We give them a blank piece of paper and we say, draw your image of a scientist, and it will look like the Albert Einstein.
Yep, the lab coat. Yep.
Yes, and the hair. And then we morph that lesson until they find the child actually sees themselves, and they draw themselves in the lab coat in the lab.
Oh, okay.
So it'll have my long hair and goggles and.
Nice. Just glad we've gone past the dissection of frogs.
We still do that too.
Do we? Really?
Yeah,
I'm
Life
still
science.
traumatized by that.
you can opt out of it though.
Oh, well, back in the 80s you could.
So you both mentioned modeling and personal stories as tools, but are there any other solutions that you can recommend to, I guess, address the issue of?
Well, I think it's important for parents to also be part of this. I mean, we can't do it all in the classroom, and so parents need to be able to encourage their kids. They have to help them. They have to support them when they are taking more difficult classes, and encourage them to do those type of classes. Teachers have to support students if they need it. Not all students need that much help, but if students need help, teachers need to be able to support them and help them to learn whatever way they learn best. And so we do need help from parents to encourage their students, and don't tell your child I hate math or I hate science. That's not going to help them, because they internalize that. And so even if you do hate math or science, don't tell them. It's one of those things that it's a little micro message. So that's one of the key things is for parents to also encourage their students to that they can do anything, and that they can succeed.
I was encouraged, Beverly, when you mentioned that the Associate Superintendent's Office is taking on this task of opening people's minds to the micro message that all of us in this community, the community of education, not just the science staff, it's not just Charlie's staff that has to promote this message. It's everybody who comes in contact with that child. Right. So everybody on that campus, the principal, assistant principals, the counselors, everybody is sending a message of what this student I can do or I cannot do. And the message is, we all can do it, and we want you to do it. And just because it's hard and difficult makes it even more worthwhile. Maybe it's even more worthwhile. If your parents, if you're the first to graduate from high school or college, or if you're the first in the family, or if you're from a long line of college graduates, you still are in power of your own path and make your own choices.
And that really boils down to relationships. When you develop those relationships with the students and you find out what it is that they really enjoy doing with STEM, I liked your definition that you gave about using engineering and technology to teach math and science.
The students have to apply it.
Right,
And
it's the
Loretta's
application,
robotics.
right, it's the application part of it, because a lot of times you remember thinking in school, what am I going to use this for? I'm never going to use this.
Exactly.
And so STEM seems like it's addressing that right there, because you're able to apply it in those spaces that we're developing, the maker spaces. So right then and there, they can apply it and see, oh my gosh, I can actually do this. And the STEM careers are so, there's such a variety of them out there that I don't have to be an electrical engineer. I don't have to be a rocket scientist. I can be whatever, a bio whatever.
Exactly.
We have kids out there right now doing real problems, you know, like solving real problems. We have at Lamar, the students did a water audit of the entire campus, and they discovered that for the type of grass that they have on their lawn, on their fields and stuff, it was getting too much water. And so they wrote a letter to our facilities office in AISD, and they changed the watering schedule based on the work that those students had done.
Wow.
You know, things like that are happening all the time. Small middle school last year was our first green flag, NWF green flag school in Texas. And then Eastside just became the first high school in Texas to win the green flag. And that means they have to do 3 different types of pathways, 3 different audits. It can be an energy audit or a environmental audit, all kinds of different things that the students have to do. And the students have to figure out what the problem is and come up with some creative solutions for it. And so we have students all over the district already doing, you know, solving problems. They're already being scientists and engineers, and that's what we want. And I like to think that all children are born scientists, all children are born engineers. They have that natural curiosity, and sometimes the way we teach science kind of scares kids away from it, and all the testing scares kids away from it. But if we can just nurture that creativity and that curiosity, any kid can succeed then if we do that.
That's a great place to wrap this up, because we have run out of time. But thank you, Charlie Gutierrez and Dr. Tim Brink, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on Breaking Down the Barriers. To keep up with information in the district and AISD community, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at AISD_BDB. Also watch Breaking Down the Barriers on AISD Channel 22, AISD.TV, every Tuesday and Thursday evening at 7:30 p.m. and Sunday mornings at 10:30 a.m. We are your hosts, Beverly Reeves and Loretta Taylor, and we look forward to talking to you next time on Breaking Down the Barriers.